Good morning, Portrait Church. I am not David Smullen. As you can tell, I have way less hair than he does, okay? My name is Chris Todd, and I get to be the young adults pastor over at Midway Church. I've been there on staff for about 11 years, and it is an honor for me to be here and get to worship with you guys today. I love David and Jenna and just how much they've poured into this church, but not only this church and this community, but also how they've poured into me personally. And I can't tell you how much that means. If you have your Bibles, we're going to be in the book of James. We're going to be studying James chapter 3. We've been going through this series called Summer Book Club. And so we're taking a dive each Sunday going into the book of James, a different chapter a Sunday. And I love how David shared a few weeks earlier that his tradition in the summertime growing up was that his dad kind of forced him to read books during the summer. I want to share with you a different tradition that I had. Growing up in the 90s, we had something called Blockbuster, and so there was no need for books. I can just share that with you, right? Goosebumps, yeah, maybe. Blockbuster, even better, right? Why read the book when you can watch the movie? And so every summer we had a tradition. It was like family fun Friday night, right? And we would, my dad would take us out to Blockbuster, and he would let me pick any movie that I wanted to in the kids section. And it was such a treat for me. I'm like a huge movie snob. Even back then, as like a 5-year-old, I feel like I had very high opinions for good movies, right? And so it was like Pixar quality, right? And so I'm sitting there, and my dad's like giving me this conversation of like, hey, like I'm gonna be picking a movie for me and your mom, and so we'll be back. Like you're fine here, and I'm just sitting there. You know, it was like the Netflix version of browsing, where it was just like looking at all of the art covers of all of the VHS cassette tapes and saying, man, I can't wait to watch something and be kind of rewind, right? Like, this is gonna be awesome. Does anybody remember Blockbuster, by the way? Or am I like, okay, cool, I'm not the only one. Okay, awesome. So I'm sitting there and I'm picking out all of these movies and different options, and I'm like, man, I only get one choice. I'm not gonna ruin my shot at this Friday night, right? Like, I'm gonna make this count. So therefore, I'm gonna pick like, good movies, and I'm walking through, and I grew up as a pastor's kid, okay? And so that there's pros and cons that come with that. And one of the pros, I should maybe emphasize this, maybe a pro and a con would be that you run into people in your community almost all the time. Like, people recognize you. Oh, I know that. That's the pastor's kid. And sometimes it was like, that's the pastor's. Sometimes it was like, that's the pastor's kid, right? Like, it was like a warning or like an encouragement. I couldn't tell. And so I remember running into somebody from our church, and she went up to us and she was like, man, that's the pastor's kid, right? Like, all the VHS cassette tapes are around me. I'm just like throwing things down on the floor everywhere because I'm not tall enough. And I'm figuring out a movie to pick. And she's like, hey, like, kind of like patting me on the back, like giving me that encouragement. Like, hey, where's your dad? Like, are you by yourself? Where are your parents? Are your parents good parents, right? Like, one of those things. And I was like, yeah, I made this passing comment that I did not even realize. Again, I was a little kid, and so the comment that I made was like, oh yeah, my dad's in the back. He likes the adult movies. I like the kid movies, right? And it was, yeah, you laugh. I wish that was her reaction, because her reaction was like, the reaction you would, as if you were just watching like The Sixth Sense for the first time. It was like horror and shock and confusion at the same time. And she was like, wait, where's your dad? And so my dad comes around the corner and was like, hey, how's it going? Like, saying hi to one of his church members, and I'm there. And so I thought I'd help my dad out. And I was like, Dad, like, explain to her, you love adult movies, right? Like, can you tell her why? And my dad does one of those things, like, if you're a parent in this room, you know this too well, where you kind of like talk through your teeth, and it's like you have a smile on, but for some reason you're really angry, right? And that was one of those expressions where he's just kind of like, get in the car, right? Like, and I was like, oh man, I can't tell why I'm in trouble. And I realized a lesson early on when I was young is that words matter. Like, it doesn't matter the tone or maybe not how you said it, but like the fact that you said it, like, it matters and it carries weight and impact. And so today we get to walk through a little bit about what James talks about in the first 11 verses of chapter 3 about how much words matter. In fact, James uses such strong language as a warning to you guys, and that he emphasizes, like, if your speech, if your words do not think that, if you don't think that they matter, I want you to know this, that your words actually shape people's destinies. And he uses this language, like words create worlds. And so if you're a guy in here and you've proposed, you know that probably the most important words you've ever heard was, yes, I'll marry you, right? Like, or I do, right? If you are at a position and you've been at this job or a company for a while and you hear devastating words, like one word spoken to you, which is you're fired, like those words mattered. If you get pulled over by a cop, like the most relieving words you can hear is I'll give you a warning, right? And probably the most comforting words at Portrait Church for you in this service is when David gets up and preaches and he says, this is my last point, right? Like we all have words that hits us. That was a joke, by the way. I love that preaching. There's different ways in which we receive words that matter and have different significance and different meaning. And so today I want to walk you guys through what James has to say about the warning of our words. James chapter 3, I'm going to start in verse 1 and I'm just going to break it down the first 11 verses. Verse 1 states this: not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. For we all stumble in many ways, and if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able also to bridle his whole body. And I find it weird that he starts off this section with teachers. Obviously, teachers, part of their job, if not most of their job, is working with communication. It's working with speech, right? And you know, if you're a school teacher in this room, like you know you did not get into that position because of power and prestige. Like you got into that position because you love kids, because you see how teachers have influenced you through their words, and you desire to do the same. And so James gives this warning from the first off, like right from the very start. Anyone who desires to be in this position, anyone who desires to hold the responsibility of being a pastor or of delivering speech or delivering the words of God, you must know that before you bear this weight or before you have this responsibility, you must know that you will be judged way more strictly. Why? Because communication and words have influenced. Number one, I would say this, that your words are being watched. The tongue is accountable. If you are here and I give this encouragement for anybody who is striving to be in ministry because they see how luxurious or maybe, how advantageous the stage might be to them in their lives, I always encourage them with this, that man, if I can just encourage you to purify your motives, because if you are on this stage to be seen, to be loved, to be heard, those are not the right reasons to be in this platform. Like you're teaching, it's something that you're going to be held accountable for, and what you say matters and how you influence people. This is so important for us to hear today. If you're begging to get into the spotlight, man, my prayer is that God keeps you far from it. Why? Because we don't just get up here to perform and play games. We understand that the words that we read and the words that we communicate to you have significance, and they matter, and they shape influence. And then he goes on and he says something really interesting in verse 2, because he talks about how we all stumble. And I like that James is trying to be relatable to me. Like, yes, we all stumble. And if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he's a perfect man, able also to bridle his whole body. Basically, essentially, what he's saying here is he makes this preface for the rest of the verses that we're about to read. And he says this: if you can control your tongue, you can control the rest of your life. This I have found to be very true. And then he further explains this point using illustrations, which I can tell James is a pastor because he uses illustrations very clearly, and I love that about him. And I want to read this to you in verse 3. He says it like this: "If we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. Look at the ships also. Though they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are guided by a very small rudder wherever the will of the pilot directs." And then in verse 5, "So also the tongue is a small member, yes, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire." What he goes on to say here is your words hold weight. And he uses this illustration and this analogy in three different ways. He says small parts, big changes. And this is how he uses and he connects us to the part of our body that is very small, but probably the most important part of your body. Whether you feel it or not, you have an incredible power right now to shape the perspectives, even the destinies of people around you. And I always like to say, think about your job. Like most of you would say, well, I got this job that I'm working at now because of either connections or because of my degree or because of my skill. But I would probably bet that most of you have kept your job because of your words, because of your communication skills, right? Like you got the job that you have now because of your job interview, and you did well in that job interview enough to earn you that job. Right? So much of your ability to have that job and to keep it is based off of what you said in that interview. And I always like to think this and say this, that, man, I am one sentence away from being fired any day at any job. Like I'm one sentence away. I can mess up and people can show me grace. But man, if I say the wrong thing, man, I can be so fired so fast. And that's just because of the power of words and how they hold weight. If you think about money, if I wrote a book that said, man, today was awesome and today was lame, you probably wouldn't buy that book because those are not like impactful words. Those are not motivating words. But if I were to write a book that said it was the best of times and it was the worst of times, you'd be like, wow, that guy's a poet. I got to buy that book, right? Why? Because words and speech formulated in the right context with timing matters. And it doesn't take for me to prove you how well this thought carries out and what James is trying to say. What he basically says here is if you think about your whole life and how it's been structured, like communication is so powerful and the selection of words and timing make all the difference with how people view you as a believer. I love how a pastor once said that the loudest sermon that you'll ever preach is with your service in your life, with your lips. That is so true. Some of you in this room, like, have your closest friendship with people based out of just a well-placed compliment. Like, you guys have been found, like, we are best friends because we always encourage each other. Those are your words. Some of you, a whole friendship has unraveled over a sentence. And you've heard them say something, and all of a sudden, the years of friendship just crumbled under the weight of just such a harsh and critical word and the wrong timing. He goes on to say this in verse 6, the tongue is a fire, and he continues this illustration, and he says, the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. I had to look that up. What does that carry? What does that mean? Like when he talks about your tongue is lit by hellfire, what does that mean? Oh, well, that word hell, and I'm gonna go a little Bible nerdy on you guys, but that word hell is actually taking out of the Hebrew words that means it's actually a place, but it's not the place that you're thinking of. It's called the Valley of Hinnom. And it's a place actually right outside of Jerusalem that they nicknamed this place hell. Because back in the Old Testament days, if you read this actually in the book of Jeremiah, you would come to find that this valley and this place was a sacred place that they worship a God, not like the God that we worship, but they worshiped idols. And what they would do is they would sacrifice their children and burn them on the fire of this place. And they would say, here, I worship this. Well, when people of God followed into this culture and they said, hey, this can't keep happening. We've got to change this. This is not how God values his people. With their words, it carried influence and it completely changed the culture. Those people then followed God, and what they decided to do with that valley is they said, let's instead of burning it to the ground, let's just use this space as a trash dump. And so, to make the connection of what James says here, when he says your tongue is lit by hellfire, what he's basically saying in context is he's saying that what you choose to say a lot of times is taken to the trash dump. Like, it's negativity, it's complaining, it's just like argumentative, it's not wholesome, right? Like it's basically you just taking this trash that you have and just throwing it to the dump and allowing for everyone to see how much this is lit on fire. He goes on to say that not only are your words lit by hellfire, but your words are ultimately wicked. And he goes on to use this language in verse 7. He says, every kind of beast and bird and reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by mankind, but no humans can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. And he uses this context, and what he says in this and this language of what he's using here is he's saying, man, imagine what insecurity can be lodged into the heart of woman from a critical husband. The person who knows you more intimately than all, callous and hurtful and harsh words, Proverbs says, are like the thrust of a sword. For some of you, words that have been said have even created trauma for your life from your past childhood. Like, man, I remember that word resonated with me. And ultimately, what James is going through is he's saying our words are just wicked. Like, not only does it create trauma for people, not only does it do damage to others, but ultimately all of it, it's just taken out to the dump every single time we talk. This is crazy because when I read this, I think to myself, man, if James uses this analogy, if people and humans, from the very beginning could learn how to tame animals like elephants that are now used in circuses or lions or, SeaWorld that has like killer whales that are doing incredible tricks, all through taming the animals. What James says is, although those things are incredible, you still can't tame your tongue. It is untamable. So what's the solution? How do I get past this? Because so far I'm reading this and I'm realizing like these are all negatives. These are all faults. So here's what I decided to do. As I was reading through this chapter, and I hope that you guys took some time maybe this past week and got to catch up with me and got to read this along, what I decided to do was write in some of these verses at the bottom, I wrote a tongue test, okay? And you can copy my format or you can make your own. I would encourage you to think through your life and what are the common things that you notice about your tongue that are not wholesome, that are for cursing, that are not for blessing, and how to curve that. And so I want to share with you some of mine own. This is how well I did with my tongue, by the way. So one of the first things as I did when I read through this and I learned that my tongue is wicked, I said, how is it wicked? And I went through each of these steps. So one of the first things I wrote was watch out for sniping, okay? And I wrote this as a tongue test. I tried this out for a week. If I can survive a week without doing any one of these things, then I've succeeded and I've proved James wrong. I'll tell you as a spoiler, like I did not prove James wrong. He's completely right in the Bible, but that's okay. So the first thing I wrote was watch out for sniping. Here's what I mean by sniping. Sniping, and I'm really good at this, sniping are people that are listening to you in a conversation, but they're just waiting to get their shot in, if that makes sense. It's like, I'm sorry, hey, before you finish the rest of your sentence, theoretically, like you're wrong and I can fact check you, right? Like that's sniping. Or it's like, actually, ooh, didn't mean to correct you there, but the word is, you said comfortable, the word is comfortable, right? Like it's a difference. And you're like, dude, you just, like, what was the whole point of that, right? Like that was sniping. And so I wrote that down. Watch out for sniping. The second thing that I wrote down was watch out for excusing, like defending yourself. This is something that I've also learned that I'm really good at just through marriage, right? Where it's like, I've had a hard week. I deserve this, and I will excuse myself. Like, oh, the reason why the kitchen's not done and the reason why I didn't wash the dishes is because, and you just go on and you just try to defend yourself. You just try to excuse yourself so that the other person says, oh, okay, maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, maybe the kitchen should not be clean today. Like that's perfectly okay, right? So watch out for excusing. The third thing that I wrote was watch out for gossip. Now, I'll be honest with you. As a pastor, I did not think I struggled with this. But here's what I caught myself on. I disguised it. I never called it gossip. What I called it was prayer request, okay? And maybe you guys can sympathize with me because this is what people do. They go, hey, have you heard about Bobby? Yeah, he just got let go from his job. Man, that's so awkward. We should pray for him, right? Oh, man, yeah. And it's like, oh my gosh, his wife doesn't even know? That's crazy. Yeah, I won't tell him. We'll pray for him, right? And it's like, is this a prayer request? I can't tell. This sounds a lot like gossip, right? And this is what I do almost all the time. I had to watch myself for this. And then the last thing, and this is probably the biggest thing, is watch out for complaining. This is what I wrote on my tongue test. I would encourage you, try this for a week. Like, just try to have this mentality where it's like, I will do none of these things. I won't complain. I won't snipe people. I won't excuse or defend myself. If people call me out on something, I will humbly take it. Like, I won't gossip. Try this for 7 days and see if you can live up to it. And if you can, man, you're way better than I am. I'll tell you that right now. But I for a week when I did this, I was thinking to myself, I cannot get through this. Even complaining. Like I would walk into the office and, it was like we had a day where the weather was cold and I was like, everybody was like, man, it's kind of freezing out there. It's really windy. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to complain about how cold I am. And I walk into the office and I'm just like, yeah, at least there's no mosquitoes. And they're like, this guy's a weirdo. What kind of sentence is that? That's really weird. Or like, yeah, there's traffic and it's like somebody's in the car with me and they're like, I hate 380. I hate it. I hate this traffic. I hate what they're doing. I hate all these stop signs. I hate all these lights. I hate that they're building this highway. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm with you, but I'm not going to say it, right? And so I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, yeah, but at least it lets me look at all of God's creation. And I'm like, dude, you're acting really weird right now, right? Like, just do this for 7 days and see if people are like calling you out on this. Like, something's off about this person. Why? Because it's so natural for us to get into this position of just complaining, of just gossiping. And I would say it like this, that fear comes free, hope takes work. Complaining comes free, but encouragement takes work. Man, this is changing my mindset and my life because when I look at this, oh yeah, like it's so easy for me to even get on social media and do all the things that everybody else is doing because it's just offered to me and because it's free. It's so easy for me to just snipe people and gun people down with my comments and with what I say through my actions and through my words on Instagram and Facebook because I don't have to talk to them in real life. I can just show them like, hey, like whether it's HOA, whatever it is, right? We all have our things. And I look at my life and I think, wow, like the things that take work are the things that I cannot do within myself. I want to keep reading because if I find this, James uses one more illustration that he goes on with. He says it like this in verse 9. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth comes blessing and cursing, my brothers. These things ought not to be so. What he's stating is so true. He's saying it's really weird, right? When a Christian claims to love Jesus, but they're bashing everybody online. They're sharing every political view that they have, and they're being like very dogmatic about it and saying, hey, there's no room for people like you. That's weird, right? It's very weird if people are saying, man, I love God, and they're singing the same songs that we're singing for worship. But yet when they go home, they're speaking so critically to their kids. There's something weird about that. And this is what James is saying. He's saying we have this natural. But can I tell you, what James says is the only way you win with your words is with Christ. The only way you'll ever win with your words is Christ, because you will have to trade the natural for the supernatural. And this is what James goes on to preach. He uses this language. He says this in verse 10. From the same mouth comes blessing and cursing. These things ought not to be so. Verse 11, does a spring pour forth from the same opening both fresh and salt water? Can a fig tree, my brothers, bear olives, or a grapevine produce figs? Neither can a salt pond yield fresh water. And basically, as he's going through this analogy and as he's sharing all of these things, he's saying that spring water produces fresh things. If you can have fresh water, then what you do is you build a village around it. But if you have salt water, well, we just call that the Dead Sea, because nothing can live there. He says you need to produce fresh water out of your life. And what he goes on to say is that it's not just adapting your wording, it's changing the source. There's a difference. Because anybody can follow behavior modification. Our world, our culture, especially our counseling, our counseling world in America, we're really good about behavior modifications. If I do this, if I behave like this, if I become like this, things will get better for my life. Maybe for a short while you'll see change, but that's not who we are as believers. As believers and as followers of Christ, we're not about behavior modification. We're about Christ transformation. And the only way that happens is if God's able to work in our hearts. That's the way we change our lips. It's through our inner life. It's through our intimacy with Christ. I can tell a lot about a speech, a lot about a person's life and how they talk with what their devotional and their intimate life looks like. And I can tell, even out of my own mouth, man, there are days where I'm like, I'm in a rush. I've been busy. I did not have time to read my word. I go straight into work. I didn't get to spend that time with Christ. And so the things that are coming out of me are either things that are out of autopilot mode, or they're things that are coming out of me that are just like, learned behavior, or I have to force myself into it. And I just naturally have this tendency to be wicked with my tongue. And here James says the only way you change the source is if you change who you run to. This is an experience. I can tell you this, that I've lived here in Texas for 11 years. Is there anybody in here that was not born and raised in Texas, or that just moved here a few years ago? Okay, awesome. So yeah, I sympathize with you guys. I don't know if maybe you can relate to me or have had this feeling before, but when I moved here, I thought for sure I was going to live here for maybe 3 months. I was thinking to myself, there's no way I'm going to last. I don't listen to country music. I don't wear cowboy boots. My knowledge of Texas, living from Miami, Florida, was all based out of SpongeBob and Sandy the Squirrel, right? This is what I thought Texas was. Hey, y'all, tipping of the hat. And I was I'm not going to survive. And I can't tell you how encouraging it was for me to move down here and for me to meet people where everybody, it seemed in Texas, was so abrasive, and they were I was treated like the grandchild. They were oh, you've never been fishing before? I'll take you to Lake Ray Roberts, right? Ryan Oliver, he was oh, you've never shot a shotgun? I'll give you 5. I have 5 in my shed, right? It was oh my goodness, anything Texas I wanted to do, I could do it, and you guys were so open arms about it, and I love that, okay? And so I wrote down on my phone a list of Texas experiences, and anytime I did something that I've never done that before, I've never went hog hunting or went dove hunting, I'm let's do it in Texas, right? All of these different things. I actually think I have we can leave that picture on for maybe 5 seconds, but that's my impression of you guys. You guys are way more manlier than that, though. I'll give you credit, though. But so going through these different experiences, I remember this was probably like my second year in ministry. We get a phone call, and I was with our men's pastor, Kenny, who was like, he's the most Texas person you ever met, right? And so we get a phone call from our preschool director, and it was like, help us, like the kids are in the playground in the middle of our church campus, and there's a fat rat snake in the playground, and I need for you guys to take it out. None of our volunteers want to do it. And Kenny looks at me and he's like, hey, have you ever gotten rid of a snake before? And I was like, no, I really don't want to today. I'll be honest with you. That's not like on my thing of ministry, right? And so he's like, come on, I'll show you. And so we're out there, and it was just this huge fat rat snake, and all the kids were leaned up against the bars of the railings of the fence, and Kenny's like, it's easy. It's like, 1, 2, 3, all you got to do is pick it up by the tail. You just got to throw it over that yard, and you're good to go, Texas way. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's not that easy, but I'm going to try this. And so I remember looking like a complete idiot where the snake is just slithering away, and I'm just like, all right, here we go. And I'm just like just kind of following it by the tail. And I'm like, oh man, dude, I'm not doing a good job with this. And I'm grabbing it. And as I grab it, that snake turns around so fast and just looks at me dead in the eye. And I'm like, you win. You can eat the kids. You can do whatever you want. I guess I'm not here for it, right? And that was kind of like my thing. And so Kenny's like, come on, I'll show you. And so he just like casually picks this up. Well, the snake does the same thing he does to Kenny, right? Snake is trying to bite back at him. But he does it the Texas way. Instead of me, just throwing it like that, what he decides to do is he decides to lasso it. I'm not even joking. And as he's lassoing this snake, the snake is, I guess, like getting dizzy or sick, but it was just like all of what was in the snake came out of the snake. And it was just kind of like, hey, free 7-Eleven Slurpee day, let's go, right? Like it was something so unnatural. And I was shocked. I was like, oh my gosh, the preschoolers are seeing this, but the preschoolers were up against the bars and they were like, whoa, like this is so cool, And I'm just thinking to myself, that's the most Texas thing I think I've ever seen in my life. That was just, I'll never forget that. That, to me, was a Texas experience. Can I tell you something? Like the only reason why I'm in ministry today is because I had people that poured into my life using their words of encouragement to say, hey, you can do this. You can follow Christ. Let me show you. Let's walk through this together. And that was the most Christian experience I've ever had in my life, where somebody looked at me and showed me grace when I messed up, when I was stuck in my sin of whatever it was, whether it through addiction, and I've been stuck in a lot of different sins. Somebody showed me the grace and used their words to counsel me through the scripture. And I now know it wasn't them, it was their source. It was Christ using them to be able to influence my life. But I will never forget those experiences. Those were milestones in my life. Can I tell you guys something? As I read through this section and as I talk about this, how the tongue is naturally wicked and we trade it for the supernatural because with Christ we can win with our words. Can I tell you something? You can win with your words, and what you choose to say can impact a lasting generation, whether it's through your kids, whether it's through our youth ministry or a young adults ministry, whoever you pour into, your words matter. And they will give experiences to people to let them do things like this, things that I never thought I would do, things that I look back and I think, man, God, thank you for putting people in my life to just speak words of wisdom. I know it's your words, to just push me, to motivate me, to speak life into me, because you know what this world needs? Not drains, but fountains. And we have a culture today that it's so easy to just use people with our language to just suck the life out of people with gossip. Like drains naturally suck water into their sewer system. But fountains, you look at fountains and they overflow giving of life. It seems like they never run out. How is this even possible? I can tell you this, the way that 1 John 4 even says it, that love embraced becomes love extended. That the love that I have, the intimacy that I have with my Christ, the personal time that I walk with the Lord, He's the one that helps shapes my words because I can't do it on my own. I need God to form me into something else. And this is my encouragement to you, that redeemed people speak redeeming words. Alive people speak life-giving words. Children of grace speak gracious words. Liberated people speak liberating words. Forgiven people speak forgiveness into other people's life. Because if the heart changes, the mouth changes. How are you with your tongue? This is my biggest encouragement to you. Where are you with the tongue test? How are you impacting somebody's life through your words and through your communication? Because everything is being watched now these days, more carefully than ever. People are looking out, and if you talk to people that are now atheists or most that are non-Christians, they would argue and say, I went to church once, but man, their words, I just can't handle that. I can't take that. And it impacted the rest of their lives. And we have the chance to say, man, I'm forgiven. I will use forgiveness in my speech. Man, I'm liberated. I'm free. I will use freedom in my speech. Man, I am filled with grace and shown grace over and over again from my Lord. I will be gracious to others. This is powerful. This is what James prompts us to. Do you have the spring, fresh water living within your soul? I would love for all of us to just bow our heads and close our eyes. And I want to offer this prayer to you. I want to give you the time to examine your life and to say, where's my relationship with Christ at? How has Christ shaped and changed my world through my words and through his words? Man, in public and in church, I'm so nice. But at the house, I'm so critical. So harsh. Man, at my job, it's just so easy for me to backtrack and to just go along with my coworkers and just complain about my boss. It's free for me. Man, when it comes to my inner thoughts and the words that I even speak to myself, it's so negative. It's not redeemable. Can I tell you something? It's the power of Christ. It's being intimate with him that just changes our language, changes our thoughts, changes our own words about ourselves even. How's your relationship with Christ? As you pray this prayer, and I want to give you guys a second to pray this prayer. God, with the words that I have, help me to be a fountain, not a drain. Help me to give people the best Christian experience that they've ever had. Because of my counsel, because of my encouragement, and because of the wisdom that only comes from you. I want to pray that prayer over you. Lord, I ask and I pray, God, that with the speech that we have, that may we not just adapt our behavior, but Lord, may we lean into your power of life-giving, fresh water, bread of life. Lord, that when I look back and I think, God, I was harsh, I was critical, I was negative, I was complaining, I was gossiping. Man, my tongue has been wicked, and it's only because it's just been let loose. This has been a busy summer. We've done so many things. And so I've gone into my natural mode, my natural tendency, my selfishness, and my sinfulness, nature. Lord, can I trade the natural for the supernatural? Lord, can I trade the grumblings for gratitude, the complaining for blessings? Lord, the salt water to the fresh spring water, the drains to the fountains. Lord, I pray that as a congregation, we may give that to you, that when people need grace, God, we point them to you. Lord, that when people need forgiveness, God, that when people need encouragement, Lord, I just pray that we may lean into your spirit and how you speak to us. God, may we think about what we say. knowing that our words truly carry the weight and have that impact. Thank you for even using people like us, Lord. Thank you for redeeming people like us so that we can be an extension of your love. And I pray this for everyone in here. In your name, amen.